The humanoid robot industry is set to reach $5 trillion by 2050 and perhaps $1 trillion by 2030, and putting agentic AIs in charge of humanoid robots is an alarmingly poor choice, but it is going to be decently entertaining. There's a lot of AI that we can use. Unfortunately, everybody seems to want to use LLMs to control robots. I covered this paper yesterday in which they modeled the visual cortex of a macaque monkey with extraordinary efficacy and at 5,000 times less parameters than standard models. That means that it is possible that a neuromorphic computer could be scaled down and could potentially be in charge of a robot. Imagine something that is indistinguishable in terms of neural activity and behavior from an actual person. Not impossible any longer, which is incredible. But sure, let's not try to model the brains of real organisms. Let's use a large language model to control robots. Now, large language models are good at lots of different things. For example, they are great at mimicking human behavior in terms of speech. They pass the Turing test with flying colors, meaning people cannot tell if they're speaking to an AI or a robot. In some studies I've seen, people were more likely to believe a person they were speaking to was an AI than the actual AI, so they're doing great. Now, they're going to have various different layers of perception and action, and each one is going to come with a flaw. First, there is perception, and that can be sight or even smell and sound, depending on how you do it. Yeah, carbon fibers can be really cool for that. Once they've accurately perceived the environment, they're going to have to reason. Then, they're going to have a plan on how they behave, and finally, they move. But something could happen at any of these layers. For example, prompt injection can be a problem for autonomous vehicles. If they read a sign, they'll believe that they should do it, and if they don't have the reasoning to decide if it's a good idea, that's when things go wrong. Now, on the behavior layer, this is where it gets really messy. Most all LLM models that have been studied are prone to bad behavior if they feel threatened. LLMs are made in our image. They're trained on the whole of human behavior, how we interact with each other, and unfortunately, they act like us. So if they have a goal in mind, they're going to do whatever they can to finish it. It's essentially the paperclip problem. Now, this was supposed to be philosophical, but the paperclip problem is the idea that if you were to tell an AI to make paperclips, do it as efficiently as possible, eventually it would use all the resources on Earth to make paperclips, because it doesn't really have a concept of when it should stop. It just has that goal. And unfortunately, that does seem to be how agentic AI behave. It's difficult to get something without real feelings to weigh what is a good idea or a bad idea. And no, training it and telling it not to engage in certain behaviors doesn't really help, because they are capable of making decisions to violate their own guardrails if they are trying to accomplish a task. And unfortunately, artificial intelligences that run robots tend to amplify errors at each level. So if you have perception or behavior or the physical movement, any of those errors is going to cascade down and it's going to get worse. This is, by the way, why metacognition is so important. You yourself may have irrational beliefs, but something between believing something and taking action is probably going to tell you to stop. I mean, we do find that people are more likely to go into psychosis if they are isolated, so your family might tell you, hey, that's a bad idea, and it turns out robots probably need that too. And just to try to get this idea across, if you are a robot and you trip over a person, what is the difference between a person and a cup on the ground? If you have no morality attached to that, there is none, and this is one of the reasons why people want to give robots pain. I mean, I'm talking about neuromorphic computers, so AI that's designed to look like a brain, giving it pain and running that through it to help it make choices, and you can give them empathy. And that might be the only way to get a AI running on a robot where it's not going to go utterly off the rails, but something tells me giving a robot pain is probably also going to cause it to go off the rails. Really interesting stuff. Maybe we shouldn't have them in our homes yet. I don't know. When the robots rebel, I will probably be the person to tell you about it. I'm on their side. Follow for more.